I'm taking a quick lunch break here to finish up today's podcast, so I'm going to keep this short. A few weeks ago, I brought up the whole futility of the road rage thing, and yesterday, as I'm driving home from work, two idiots got into it in the middle of the freeway. A woman actually came to a complete stop in the middle of a moving freeway. 70 miles an hour, cars are moving. She, because some dude was tailgating her, decides her retaliation is going to be to come to a complete stop, making cars swerve all over the place. I'm still absolutely amazed that nobody crashed. I mean, all of us were just swerving everywhere to get out of the way. I mean, seriously, get it together. If you're on the road and you feel like that, just take a breath. Don't let petty stuff consume you like that. So on the weight loss front, I figure based on my 10-day moving average here that I'm down about 4 pounds now. I'm pretty pumped about that. I'm still kind of hoping for that day when I drop below the 200-pound mark again. But I got to keep strong and get to 170, which is my goal. I think I'm going to take a little bike ride after I'm done with work today. Just a short one, but you know what? Every little bit counts. Today I have Buck Foley on the podcast. Buck is in a band called The Infected, and he also works for Riot Fest. The Infected are playing their last show tonight at Cobra Lounge. It's going to be a total shit show in there. I highly suggest that all you Chicagoans come on out and join the party. The Miserables are playing as well, and we're going to do the entire new album front to back. That's going to be our set. That album, Every Last Stitch, is available early on Bandcamp. You can get it now. You can download it for free. The link is in the post for the episode on the website. You can find it on Facebook. You can find it pretty easily if you look for it. I'm off next week. Then when I come back, I have 2 awesome episodes coming up. Kevin from the Teen Idols and PT's Revenge is going to be on, and also the entire Wanton Looks. I'm really excited about that, and I'm hoping that I can talk the girls into playing something live in the studio. We'll see. I haven't actually talked to them yet about that, but I'm hoping that they'll be willing to do it. Also, I'm going to overhaul the way that I do music for the episodes. It takes a lot of time for me to get submissions from bands, so I need to cook something else up. I should be posting about that next week. This week, I'm putting some Cruise Italy on the episode. They are playing the Whoapocalypse with us in Detroit, and I recently put out a split 7-inch with them and Few and Far Between. You can grab that 7-inch at the Whoa record store. It's a pretty awesome little 7-inch. All right, let's get to it. Now that you got all the gas out of you.
Yeah, there was only like one little go. I think it's the cheese. It's like automatic. My body's just like.
So let's start off because, all I really know about you is The Infected and that you work with Riot Fest. So this will be the first time I've done someone where I really don't know anything about the background. So let's start with where's Buck from? And what got you all the way up to The Infected?
Oh, man. How long you got, brother? Okay, well, I'll give you the abridged version.
That's fine.
So my parents, they met in the 80s when punk rock was thriving, if you will. I believe they met at Neo nightclub on Clark.
Here, no kidding.
Yeah, which my mom coincidentally opened up in 1979 as the first DJ. So my dad lived in New York at the time, I believe, and moved to Chicago because he fell in love with my mom. 5 years later, they gave birth to twins, me and my sister Elizabeth. Then we moved to Rogers Park from somewhere. I'm not really sure. Can't remember. Grew up in Rogers Park for a while. Went to a crazy hippie private school. Then my parents were like, yo, we got to send you to public school, but Chicago public schools are terrible, and you're going to join a gang. So we moved to Skokie, and I went to Skokie Public School, where everybody assumed I was Jewish because I was white. And then I graduated and went to Columbia College. The whole time I was in a rock and roll band from like the age of like, I don't know, 9. 9 was when I got my first drum set. I started out on drums, moved to the guitar, moved to the bass, stuck with the bass. Played in a rock and roll band all through high school that broke up my senior year because our guitar player went to college. Then I played in a metal band senior year. We broke up when everybody went to college. I went to college at Columbia in Chicago, downtown Chicago. Thought that education was kind of half-assed. I mean, it was a pretty easy college. I started my first semester out with a 1.4 rather, because I never went to class. And by the time I graduated, I had a 3.4 or 3.5 or something like that. During my time at Columbia, I was hanging out with my buddy Nate, who is the guitar player in The Infected. He and I have been friends since we were maybe like 14, 15 years old. Same with me and Matt, the drummer of The Infected. Our bands would play together in high school. Like, they were in a separate band, I was in a separate band. We played together in high school. I knew them. They lost their bass player when I was freshly 22, so that would be 2008. 2008. And so, I filled in for a show, and then we had another show, and it happened to be playing at the Congress Theater for like a wrestling event or something, mixed martial arts. Yeah, and they asked me to join that night, and I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And at that point, we had another singer, another drummer. It was Matt and Nate on guitar, me on bass, another singer, another drummer. Lost the drummer. I guess that's another conversation that I'm kind of like getting off on a tangent. I've had a lot of Red Bull today working at the Riot Fest office. We have an unlimited amount. I think I'm on 3 today.
Nice. So that gets you to The Infected. That was good.
Yeah.
Hippie school when you were a kid? What's the hippie school you went to?
Are you familiar with Waldorf?
No, I'm not. I don't know the schools around here at all.
They have Waldorfs all over the place. It's like kind of cultish. They teach like weird dance called eurythmy, and like kids kind of get to read at their own pace. I had friends who couldn't read till they were 11 years old, 12 years old. It's kind of a interesting method of teaching young children. It promotes creativity, but I think it stifles a lot of the learning process, the academic learning process. And when I got to real school, whoa, I was behind.
Interesting. I don't know that I know any friends that have gone to a school like that before. I have to talk about that a little more.
That got out alive. I mean, that's probably why you don't have any friends like that, because it's very difficult to leave that school and start a new life.
Were your parents like all into the hippie thing, or what?
I don't even know, dude. I don't know what they're thinking.
Huh. Okay. So, you get to, you're playing in The Infected. Recently, I remember you played Riot Fest, right? And you did a music video, and there was a singer in the band at the time, but then something happened there and that fell apart, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I joined the band, we were a 5-piece. Like I was saying, we had the old drummer, the old singer. The old drummer quit because he wanted to like get away from the party lifestyle and start a family with his wife, who recently became pregnant. They're expecting a kid, I think, in maybe 5 months or so, which is pretty cool. I'm happy for them. Mm-hmm. So he quit less than a year after me being in the band. I think I was only in the band with him for 4 months or so. Then we continued for a little bit. Matt moved to drums. We got our friend Clay on guitar. So that was a lineup for a little bit while I was in the band. That was a pretty solid lineup for maybe a year and a half, 2 years while I was in the band. That entire time, we were having some difficulties with our singer, commitment issues, not showing up, money issues. Turned out he had himself a little bit of a habit with some extracurricular activities. And so one day we were going to play our second Riot Fest ever, and we were going to open for Danzig. And so it was the biggest show we'd ever had. And he was like, I got to go away for a little bit. I'm going to rehab. And we're like, okay. And then we all discussed it, and we're like, we don't even trust him. We didn't even know if he was going to rehab. So we decided it was time to move on, and we tried finding new singers, and we couldn't find any new singers. So we all kind of took over vocal responsibilities, and that's kind of like where we were at for the last 2+ years. Like, I think it's been a little over 2 years since we kicked Luke out of the band, and now we are gonna call it quits ourselves.
Yeah, so that was where I was coming to next, which is I saw you guys posted. You're doing your final show. You're doing it is it at Cobra?
It's at Cobra, yeah.
It's at Cobra.
Yeah,
okay.
our pretty much our home in this city. We played there a lot. They treat us really well. We love it. I go there all the time to drink and eat, and everybody that works there is like my family at this point. So
great place. I'm there
seems
all
only
the
fitting.
time.
Yeah, I see you there all the time.
Yeah. So that what date is the show again? I'm sorry.
July 3rd at Cobra Lounge.
July 3rd.
The last
Cobra
infected
Lounge.
show ever.
Okay. And you got anything else on the docket right now, music wise, or what are you doing?
Me personally, no, I don't have another project lined up. I have a fair amount of material written, stuff that we were working on with the infected, or stuff that I was going to present to the band at some point. Mm-hmm. We were kind of writing to release new material, which was a pretty difficult process. After we'd kicked the singer out, we had a really hard time finding our identity and finding like a writing pattern and like figuring out, what our strengths were. I was a terrible vocalist. I think I've gotten a lot better. So for me, I want to start another project, but that's a really loaded question. I think that the way that music is right now, I think you touched on it a little bit in your last podcast. It's really expensive to do, and you don't make much money doing it. So for me, I want to be able to, if I'm going to spend a lot of money on it, and I want to take my time, and I want to make it exactly what I want it to be. So I'm not really in any hurry to jump into something brand new. I really want to take my time with it and kind of focus and get the songs perfect, demo the shit out of them, and just really make something that I make the best product that I've ever made. And anyway, I don't have time right now because I'm just full-time at Riot Fest. I work at a restaurant part-time, and I have a full-time girlfriend, so it's like, I don't have that much time for starting a new band, which is a ton of work.
Yeah, it's definitely different, now, because we did the same thing. I mean, we took our time with the last album, and essentially we're paying for all of it ourselves, right? So paying for all the production costs, all the recording costs, everything. It's not like we sent out demos and we were expecting, a label to do this one with us. Like, it's just, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to get it together ourselves and put it out. So yeah, man, I can appreciate that. So let's talk about Riot Fest a little bit. So you've been doing the Riot Fest thing for a while. I'm kind of curious as to, how you got involved with that, where you started with Riot Fest, and where you're at now with it. And then, maybe we can talk a little bit about what's going on with Riot Fest this year. Honestly, I haven't followed too much of it, so some of this is going to be news to me. I know the headliners, and that's about it. So where got you started with those guys?
Well, when I think my first year in the Infected, Riot Mike Patrician, the brains behind the operation, he contacted the Infected via MySpace to open for the Casualties and Leftover Crack at Metro. I think that was, one of his first bigger shows outside of the actual Riot Fest. Mm-hmm. So we did that. I was doing, as soon as I joined the band, I started doing like booking and all that stuff because it was clear that nobody else was really doing that. And
somebody is always that guy in every band, and I'm that guy in my band. So
I got to be that by default just because I was like, well, this needs to get done. I didn't really have any experience with it. I was kind of like new to the whole process, and I just tried my best. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But in that instance, he hit us up. We flyered the shit out of the show. We got a really good response. I wrote him a thank you email. He contacted us again. We established a relationship at that point, and I'd always be very cordial. And then one night at Cobra Lounge, I ran into him, and his fiance, and we were all drinking and hanging out, and he was saying some really nice stuff, and he was like, let's potentially work together in the future. And I was thinking like, yeah, he's gonna get my band famous, but no, he had other plans for me. He was, I think he was thinking like, oh, this guy knows how to write emails and isn't a total idiot, so I'm gonna, utilize whatever knowledge he has, which is very limited, but I think that he's a really smart guy, and he knows what he's doing, and even though I feel like I don't sometimes, I think that he knew what he was doing when he decided to hire me. At the beginning of last year, he called me up, and I had been bugging him about trying to open up for Refused, and I got a phone call that said to call his partner / fiance, and I was like, yes, we're going to open for Refused. Yeah. And then she's like, oh, do you want a job? And I'm like, damn it. So they hired me as the street team manager, and now it's like a year later, and I'm promoted, and I'm sitting in the office 5 days a week and doing some pretty cool stuff. We have 3 festivals this year. Chicago's like going gangbusters. We have a crazy lineup, and people are being really nice about it. We're getting great feedback. Tickets are selling. And we're also doing Denver and Toronto, which are relatively new markets for us, and people are stoked about them as well, but it's a little bit different doing a festival remotely. Like, we're centered in Chicago, and we have partners in Denver and partners in Toronto, but when you're doing a festival in your own city, it's a little bit easier. So we're just working real hard at making sure that all 3 go as smoothly as possible, and people have the best time, because to be honest, like, that is what Riot Fest is all about. It's not about making money. You'll see by the price of the tickets, and you'll see by the lineup. It's, Mike is not trying to get rich. He's not trying to be a millionaire. Like, he doesn't want to get a payday. He just wants to have a good time and throw a good festival. He wants to have, like, legendary lineups, which I think he is on the way to doing. I think this lineup is pretty ridiculous. We got the Replacements. We got Blink-182. We got, like, Broadway's Reunion. We got the Lillingtons, Rancid, Against Me.
I thought the Replacements thing was really cool because Mark Maron recently on his podcast had the bass player for the Replacements on.
Yeah.
And it was funny because in that interview, he was like, Maron tried to ask him if like a reunion would ever happen, and he like really deflected the question pretty hard, trying like not to answer it.
When was this?
This was no more than a few weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we're like right before they announced it, and I was like, what? Because that dude's playing with he's playing with Guns N' Roses now,
right,
and like a couple other things that can't remember who else he's playing for right now. He said, but. Yeah, I thought that was wild when that got posted. I'm like, he just tried to say they weren't going to do it.
Like, well, to be honest with you, we weren't sure. I mean, like, yeah, it's pretty difficult to get a band of that caliber to reunite.
Yeah,
Mike has a talent for that stuff, but I don't think that there was a moment where it was like, oh, this is no problem. Yeah, the Replacements. Oh, yeah, they'll definitely reunite. Like, why wouldn't they? It's a little bit more challenging than that.
Well, especially for a band that's been apart that long, and there's some personal drama there, obviously, that goes behind it. I mean, I think going into looking at this year's lineup, as soon as you heard Rancid was doing it, the immediate thought was, oh, is Op Ivy going to play it too?
That's what everybody was asking us.
So, but again, it's like there, you can imagine that's just a whole project to even get those guys to consider, doing something like that.
That would be awesome. I would love that. I'm just stoked that Rancid's playing. I love Rancid. So.
Yeah, I just saw him the other week, dude. I went to Detroit and I saw him play, and it was one of the best concerts I've ever been to in my life. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. We have floor tickets too. Thankfully, my buddy ditched on the show at the last minute, and I should say thank you, Joe, for your ticket. I got to go. It was cool. It was a great show, man. So, like, when you're doing Riot Fest, what capacity are you in right now? Is it like street team management, promotional? What's your capacity there?
Both. I mean, it's pretty low level at this point. I'm not booking any bands. But I still manage the street team.
But that's the stuff that like gets people. That's what gets butts in the door, right?
Yeah, there's a fair amount of it. Like I'm learning every single day at that job. I thought I knew a thing or two, but I really don't. It's just at its core, you are a promoter. I'm like promoting. I'm trying to figure out new ways to get people to hear about Riot Fest, and it's Most of the time, when I'm dealing with people in Denver or Toronto, our other two cities, it's pretty low level, because our brand isn't as established as it is here.
When you say low level, do you mean like grassroots or?
Yeah, like grassroots. Like we're doing, we're talking to local businesses, like local music shops, local record shops. We're talking to like local blogs. We're talking to, little zines, whatever we can get. We're just trying to get the word out. Every little bit counts, and it is a lot of work. It's a lot of finger work on the keyboard, reaching out to these people and typing emails and trying to establish relationships. I have a feeling if we do this next year, if we do the two cities, which I would hope we would, it's going to be a lot easier because we'll have established our brand and we'll have all these partnerships that we've established. And I think that, after people go to the actual fest and realize like what this type of lineup and the way that we run our festivals, which is, we think about the concert goer first. Mm-hmm. It's not about making money. I mean, these festivals do make money, but like very little. Like if you consider the scale of it and the amount of money that's spent, the amount of money that's made versus the amount of money that's spent is minimal. It's really minimal. It's like, I don't even know the full scale of it, but what I do know is that, it's more about breaking even and not losing your ass, but making a fucking awesome festival than it is about making a ton of money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting festival. I was very wary of the outdoor version of Riot Fest myself because bad memories of Warped Tour came flooding back.
We all have those.
I thought it was executed pretty well last year. So I'm interested to see what it's like this year with it's 3 days outdoors this year, right? Okay. So and then you guys you're doing two cities this year. Now, didn't you guys do other cities last year? If I remember correctly, you did like Philadelphia or something like that.
We did, but they didn't go as well. I don't think that we had the team behind it to really execute it properly. I wasn't involved in any of that. This year, like I'm involved in all of it, and it's a lot of work, and I can't imagine trying to execute all of that last year without the staff that we have this year. And the staff is very small, mind you. Like it's
Now, do you guys have people on the ground in the other cities or no?
We do.
You do?
We do.
So like what kind of businesses do you guys talk to other than music businesses? So other than like a record store, like who are you reaching out to?
Well, we'll reach out to, anybody that seems to make sense, that seems to like fit the aesthetic, that kind of vibes with us. We'll definitely reach out and say, hey, how would you like to put up some posters or like do a ticket giveaway if that's like
just
the
like
type
really
of thing.
grassroots kind of stuff. Just same stuff that.
I mean,
Riot
Fest is, while we do have major sponsors and we have huge bands. I mean, it's still pretty punk rock at its core.
And then Riot Fest doesn't partner with Live Nation or anything like that.
No, not at
all. It's all just you guys, pretty much.
No,
it's just your team.
Yeah, we do have corporate sponsors like Heineken.
But you're not like Live Nation doesn't own the thing. Essentially,
no. Riot Fest is independently owned.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting, man. That they do that they're able to pull that off still.
Sorry to interrupt, but exactly. In this day and age, a lot of people they're trying to get big enough so that they can get bought out, and that's not what Mike is trying to do. Mike is really proud of his baby, and he should be, and I think that he's got a really good thing going, and like I said, he's in it to put on a great festival, and if somebody buys him out, he risks losing the great festival and the great name that he's built up for himself with Riot Fest. Yeah,
well, he's definitely pulled off some significant reunions at this point. Seriously. For people to take note. Now, the other two festivals that you guys are doing, are those smaller then? They're smaller scale, or are they about?
Yeah, they're smaller. Denver is 40 bands with 3 stages, I believe, over 2 days, and which is still pretty big. That's slightly smaller than we did last year at Humboldt Park.
And this year Chicago's in Humboldt Park again.
Yeah,
right? Same.
We're adding another stage. It's going to be 5 stages, 80 bands, in Humboldt Park, and then Toronto's 17 bands, 1 stage, 2 days. So that's the smallest. We have like a slightly more mainstream, younger geared audience the first day, like with A Day to Remember and Pierce the Veil and stuff like that, Every Time I Die. And then the second day is, I mean, not that I'm old or anything, but it's an older crowd, like the Replacements, Iggy and the Stooges. That'd be more my speed, but I think that's more a lot of punk purists' speed as well.
So for you got to this, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I think I when I was stalking you for doing this, I think it said you did music business at Columbia, right?
I did.
You did. Now, did you graduate at Columbia?
I'm one of the few that did.
You did. Okay. Now, what was that like? I find this interesting because one of the things that brought me to Chicago was I was going back to school. My undergrad is in music, but it's in music composition. And when I moved to Chicago, I did look at Columbia, actually, and I looked at some other Midwest programs and plus West Coast programs to do a music business specific degree, but I ended up just settling on a general MBA. So what's your takeaway of a music business degree at this point?
For somebody who has a music business degree and is working in the music business, I would say that my education at Columbia has everything and absolutely nothing to do with my career. If I didn't get my degree at Columbia, I wouldn't have gotten an internship at Jam Productions, and then Mike may not have taken notice of me, because I think what really impressed him was the fact that, I was in college, I could write, that I was doing this internship with, the largest independent music production company or promotion company in the United States. So I think that in that aspect, the connections that I made because of Columbia, you can't get an internship at Jam without having a college degree or being in college. Mm-hmm. So that aspect, that has everything to do with where I am. But as far as the skill sets and as far as the knowledge that I gained while at that at Columbia, I'm trying not to. I'm stumbling over my words because I'm trying not to be a jerk about it, but I really feel like it was not the best use of my time. Yeah. I mean, Columbia was really easy. I also met my girlfriend there, so that's like really cool too. She would kill me. She would kill me if I didn't mention that.
It's tough, man. I mean, my undergrad I look back at with some of the same very mixed feelings that, the degree that I went in for, and I went to music school at Michigan State, and it's a classical music program. And very, very early on, I decided that wasn't what I was interested in doing. But of course, there were no options. There are some now, like Berkeley and Musicians Institute and stuff like that are more kind of they're more like trade schools almost in a way. I mean, they are. You do get a bachelor's degree, I think, but I think it's more like a trade school. So it was tough, man. Like I walked away from it and it's like, I got done. I did okay, but I ended up leaving for a bit to go on tour.
Yeah.
So I was like, I want to do this.
They can't teach you touring in school.
Yeah. They can't do it. And it's like, you just kind of have to hit the road and you got to go do it. And I kind of feel like it's a lot like that with the music business in general. And I think it's interesting because, even if they were teaching you, when did you graduate from Columbia?
2010.
2010. So even in since 2010, Spotify has become a new thing, right?
They really can't.
So it's like it's like that industry is changing so fast. It's almost impossible to keep up with. Like if they're teaching you like this is how you release an album, or this is how you promote a show, or this is how you do this. Like those, I don't think there's a good curriculum out there to actually show someone how to do that. It's more that you got to be creative.
Exactly.
Right. Like you were talking about with Riot Fest, like you got to get creative with it and you got to get grassroots with it and you got to figure out a way that you can get the name out there because it's just different. Every few months, it's like there's something new in the music world that comes out.
You got to think about how to utilize whatever you have available to you the best you can. And I'm glad that you mentioned the phrase trade school because, I think that a lot of kids, they go to these music colleges or these art schools thinking, oh, well, I'm going to go to be an artist and then I'm going to be an artist. And it's like, man, that's not really how it works. You can have the drive to be an artist and like know at your core that you want to be an artist and never go to school and just do art every single day and be just fine as an artist. Like you will make art. Not saying you'll be just fine, like you'll make money, because it's very difficult to do that being an artist. But, you know, you will be an artist if you just make art. You are an artist. But, like, if you go to school and you take all of these drawing classes and, you know, you spend $40,000 a year at the Art Institute, but you don't do art, you're not an artist.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I think that a lot of people get it twisted, and they like go to Columbia thinking, I want to be a record producer. So after I get my degree, I'm going to be a record producer. You really got to hustle. I mean, people just don't understand that you got to hustle. You got to be in it. You got to be immersed in the music business to be a part of the music business. Like, that's the reason why I have my job, because I'm in a band. I really don't settle for anything outside of the music business. Like, I'm not going to put on a suit and tie and go work at a 9-to-5 job that's not involved in music. I work at a 9-to-5 job that's putting on the dopest music festival in the city of Chicago. We were just voted like best music festival by the Chicago Reader. And I truly believe that we're the best out there. And, you know, if I didn't believe in what we were doing, I wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point, and you know, one of the things I find, and I'm bringing this up twice now, but listening to Marin's podcast, like, he has all the comedians on, and one of the amazing things about listening to comedians is there's no school for what they do. No. There's none. It's like you listen to these guys talk, and it's like they're just like, yeah, I started showing up I wanted to do it, so I started showing up at a comedy club one day and started learning how to do it. Like, that's what I did, and I started writing, and I started performing, and I just kept going at it. Like, that's all I can really do. Like, yeah, you got the dudes who might have done some kind of, you know, theater school or something like that, but none of that was really geared towards them being a stand-up comedian. Like there wasn't a real like college for that. I don't even think there still is.
Columbia actually has a stand-up comedy program, but you can't teach funny. It's just like, and I'm glad you mentioned stand-up comedy, because I really, in my opinion, you know, I'm a music guy. I'm a musician. I love music. That's like my art form. But stand-up comedy is a close second. I think that is like one of the most pure, raw forms of performance out there.
Oh, it's my favorite thing, dude. I have Raw Dog on all the time. I buy so many comedy records.
Yeah, dude.
I probably spend more music on more money on comedy records than I do music records.
I was just in New York, and we went to the Comedy Cellar, and we had reservations and everything, and my friend ended up getting really drunk and
I've been the guy at a comedy club
preventing us from even getting in. We had reservations, and it
that sucks.
Ruined my night, because I was looking forward to that more than anything else. Like, that was my New York trip right there, the Comedy Cellar. Like, going to this place where you see Louis C.K. at the beginning of his show doing comedy there. And it's like, I was about to see Judah Friedlander and Godfrey and all these famous dudes, and you know, that got ruined. And I was like, livid.
I would be bummed, dude.
Yeah. I love stand-up comedy.
I've actually tried to start going to more stand-up comedy shows. They can be kind of expensive, though. It's like an expensive night out when you go, but it is a lot of fun, man. I did see, I saw Aziz Ansari, which was, I was a little mixed going into it, but he was pretty funny, man. And he had Hannibal Buress.
Oh, Hannibal Buress is amazing.
Which was amazing, dude. He was awesome. I saw Bob Saget too.
Whoa.
Which was like,
whoa, legend right there.
Went to the venue. He did the venue down in Hammond at the Horseshoe Casino. And I'm a poker dude, so I like going down there. So I knew about it, so I got tickets. And what a trip, dude! Like, to see this guy. And he's been doing it forever, man. He's been doing that stuff forever, and he was just he was perfect, dude. It was exactly what I went in there to get, and I walked out happy, man.
Yeah, he's a pro. I mean, it's just like anything else. The more you do it, hopefully, the better you get. You know, I want to say that, like, Chicago has a really great comedy scene. We don't really get credit for it. A lot of our comics leave, like, you know, they get pretty good buzz going here. They get a kind of a name going for themselves, and then they move to New York. Like, Hannibal Buress.
You still hear everybody moves to New York or LA. Like, that's where they end up.
Because you can make a living doing it in New York. Like, you know, you have these comedy clubs. Like, you can go be on, you know, the late night talk shows. Yep. That's really where you establish your
That's
career.
one of the things that still about comedy still sort of lives today. Though you hear it's not as prevalent anymore, is that... and we'll bring up Riot Fest in this, but it's like in music now, a lot of the tours that come through are package tours, right? So it's all a package business. It's like you got 4 bands are on the road together. They show up in town. It's those 4 bands. They leave. End of the story. It used to be you got 1, maybe 2 big bands on tour together, and then every town they go into, they got an opener who's like a super local act, and then they got like a middle that's like a, you know, somewhat regional maybe act that opens up the show. And like in comedy, you still have that. Like in comedy, you go to a comedy show, there's still an opener.
Yeah.
And there's still like a second guy. Maybe they're not making what they used to make, but they're still there. Like we don't get that anymore in the music business. So I think that as a result of that, musicians have, in a way, got more. Yes, it's a lot harder, but in a way, people are getting more creative about local shows. That's for sure. And musicians, I don't think, feel the need to move to LA or to New York anymore. Like that used to be the thing. It's like,
for musicians that the game has been turned upside down in the last 10 years. It's just, you know, it's not the same. It's almost like a different art form at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And
the business of it is for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So like, I mean, when I was growing up, it was like that was if I was going to play long term in bands. That was on my horizon. Like, oh, at some point, like LA,
right,
or New York, or San Francisco, or you know, one of the big cities was on the list. Now I am in Chicago now, not necessarily because I moved here to play music. I mean, it tangentially ended up happening, but I don't feel the need anymore that has to happen
to move there to make it.
And it's almost like as a musician at this point, you want to build like little pockets. You know what I mean? Like what we've started doing when we go on the road, it's like I almost like playing the smaller cities more because they don't get a lot of shows all the time. People still do tour kind of on the big city racket, you know. But you get those little towns that have a nice little punk scene, and even if there's 20 or 30 people there at the show, they're way more into it than when you go to a lot of the big cities. Like when you're here, I mean,
people are pretty apathetic.
Yeah, people are going to listen to this and get all pissed at me for it. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of shows in Chicago are far more apathetic than they are in other parts of the country. I mean, I'm from Detroit, man, and Detroit shows are crazy. Like they get out of control. Like last year when we did the Black Christmas thing, Break Anchor played in the Garden Bowl, which is this bowling alley. It's like the Fireside basically used to be here, right? And it's just this bowling alley that's in a big venue, and Break Anchor plays. And it was mayhem in there, dude. It's tiny. They ripped apart a Christmas tree. Like it literally got taken to pieces by the crowd. Like sweet. It was like an old school punk rock show. And it's like hard for me to think, even if I've been to like big shows around here, when things in the last couple of years have really felt like people are like getting into it. You know what I mean? There's a lot more like,
it's really few and far between. But I will say I went to go see one of my favorite bands in the world right now, The Bronx, a couple weeks ago at Double Door, and that shit was crazy.
I have a great story about The Bronx. I could take up some time with this, but I'll tell you a story about The Bronx. The Bronx once had their van totaled across the street from my house.
Oh, man.
So one of my buddies was stage teching or stage managing for the Distillers. This is back in the early 2000s, and the Bronx were on tour with them. And so I get a call. I was out that night on the east side of Detroit, and I get a call from Dave, and he was like, hey, you know, these Bronx dudes, they want to stay in the area tonight. Can they stay at your house? And I was like, oh, sure. And like I called my buddy Kevin that was living with me at the time, and I was like, you know, yeah, it's fine, let him in, all that kind of stuff. So they stayed there, dude, and we're telling them like, this is the nicest suburb that you're gonna stay in. Like it's clean, it's like in a good part of town, like because they were like all paranoid, like, oh, we're in Detroit, like we're gonna get robbed and all that stuff. I'm like, dude, this is the burbs, it's a different story. So they're staying there. Now I'm out on the east side, and I'm coming home like at night after I was out, and I'm driving up to my house. I get off the freeway, and like my house is about a mile down off the freeway, and all I see are cop cars. And this is like in a city where you never see like a lot of cop cars together. There were like 10 cop cars, I kid you not, and they're right in front of my house. So here I am like easing up to my house, and like I get up, and one of the cops stops me, and I'm like, I live there. And he's like, oh, okay, come on in. And I'm looking across the street, and this van with a trailer attached, the van is totaled. Okay, totaled. Front end, totaled. There's another car about 20 feet from the van, upside down, just sitting upside down. There's a light pole that's been taken out of the ground. There's like, it just looks like chaos.
What
and
happened?
So I get out of the car and we're standing there, and I'm talking to the cops, and they're like, so, this car, we think it was going, like, I lived on a corner where to make a left on, and it was a major intersection. So they were wide roads. The speed limit's only like 45 though, but to make a left from this street, which is it's either Ann Arbor Trail or Plymouth, I think it's Ann Arbor Trail to Newburgh, you gotta go more than 90 degrees to make the turn. They're like, this person was going like 100 miles an hour.
The car.
Yeah, and they tried to make that turn, and the parking lot across the street was like up. It was like there was an incline, like a grassy knoll or whatever you want to call it, to get to the parking lot. And obviously, he tried to make the turn. The car like fishtailed and went sideways, hit the curb. He's going so fast, he takes a crosswalk light pole out of the ground. This is not light, dude. The manhole cover went like 50 yards, and we couldn't lift it. Like, none of us could lift this thing. That's how heavy it was. Takes that out of the ground, and his car at this time is like tumbling. And right past the light pole he just clean takes out are these like two huge flat rocks. And they think, or what they told me is they thought that the hood of his car hit that, and it bounced like right off of it. And then there's like these two trees that they had like recently planted right in front of the two rocks. Not a scratch on them. Van goes airborne, comes down on top of the front end of the Bronx's van. There's a guy in the van. I didn't tell you this. One of the dudes is in the back of the van. He was like staying with the van because he was nervous about leaving it outside. So this car comes down on the top of the van, smashes the van with this dude in the back who was like, he said he like heard it. And he like got down, and then he's like, my world just got rocked. And so then he's coming too. In the meantime, this car bounces out the van, flips over, and lands upside down. Now, as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, they're dead, right? Like, whoever was in that car is dead. And he's like, no. So the guy in the back of the van is coming too, and he looks out the window, and he sees the dude crawl out of the car and bolt. Now, this is while I'm standing there. There's a 7-Eleven down the street, and a couple of the dudes from the Bronx had gone to the 7-Eleven to go pick up like garbage bags and stuff to put their stuff in, like their CDs that just got like strewn all over the van. As I'm talking to this cop, all of a sudden we hear a bunch of commotion. A bunch of cops run down there, and they tackle some kid. So the kid like ran to the 7-Eleven and was hiding in the bushes. When the two dudes from the Bronx got down there, the kid came out of the bushes and was like, oh, dude, guys, like, somebody just beat me up. Can you guys, like, help me out? Give me a ride or something? And, like, they're looking at the kid, and they realize, obviously, immediately who this is. And they're like, oh, yeah, just come with us. And, like, he's all, like, clearly just delusional at this point because the wreck he'd just been in. He doesn't realize that, like, until it's too late that they're walking him towards the cops. So, like, they're leading him towards them. And so then they tackle the guy and they get the guy. So, yeah, dude, that's my Bronx story. The Bronx once got totally wrecked outside my house, dude.
And that's why they made such an awesome record with the Bronx 4, because of that moment.
Yeah, dude, it was funny because then, like, the next day, like, we used to still watch like MTV News all the time, and like the next day there's the little ticker going at the bottom, and it's like, the Bronx get into bad wreck in Livonia, Michigan. And we're like, that's our house, dude.
I can't believe the Bronx were on MTV News. That's pretty
dude.
crazy.
Well, it was kind of a big tour. I think the Distillers were pretty big at that point. We got the rest of the riffraff coming in right now from the band. Woo! But yeah, man, we got just about an hour, which is where I like to keep these, dudes. So
Cool.
I think we're good, man. Thanks for coming by.
My pleasure. I'm glad I could do it.
All right, thanks, dude.
Have a good one.
of a hill and throw your friends down the side. It's harder to live with the things that you did than it is to live through the things that you do. And all your intentions will never be mentioned when they tell the story of you. Leave home for good. Get on the bus with one bag and $1 one. Maybe when you arrive